All right, today I wanted to talk about the variability built into Superlab. So just to kind of recap of what we've covered so far, we have went over building an experiment we built a lexical decision-making task experiment. We went over different inputs that you can use in Superlab, so different inputs the participant can actually give in order to answer something. And today I'd like to go over the variability options. So these are all sort of called trial levels, and they're all variable. There's three kinds. There's a location variable, a color variable, and a time variable. And we'll go over how it's set up, what its possible use is for, and then that'll kind of be the gist of this video. So as you can see, what I've set up over here is I've set up instructions. So instructions for each variable trial level, and then the actual kind of show of that, and then the same thing again. So we'll do the location first, we'll do color second, and then time last. I'll do my best to go over every step of this. I decided it's probably easier if I do the video where things are already made, that I make them already. That way, I don't make as many mistakes trying to remake them from scratch. So we'll start off first just by looking at where these things even come from. So in the experiment window, if you go into the trial levels, what you'll see is I have three over here: location, colors, and time. And in order to add one, you would just click on this plus button, and it would ask you create a variable of type location, color, or time limit. The first one I did was locations. If I double click on location, it's going to give me levels, and levels, all it is it just tells me to enter a name for it. So I'm deciding to do mine as a upper left, upper right, lower right. And what I did is I created a kind of arbitrary system. I made a coordinate system, and I'll kind of just zoom in on one of -400 and 400. The idea being that we should have the screen almost set up into a quadrant system. So I did that, and then kind of just going through, we see it's the same thing. And each of these should overlap so that it does actually create this upper left, upper right, lower right. Level selection, I haven't really played around with this too much, but the idea is that use the following order, and it gives you an example of what it looks at. So in this case, random with no replacement. A level is picked at random. Given enough trials, every level is picked once before Superlab will use the same level again. Randomize levels before start of each experiment if it's within subjects, and a new group between subjects. So if our trials repeated due to feedback, which we don't actually have, so we're not really doing that, what I will probably do for this is I'll probably just set this to be random with replacement. So levels picked at random, it's possible for some levels to be picked several times while others are never picked. In this case, we're not going to have something where it goes upper left, upper right, lower right. We want to see upper left, lower right, lower left, upper right, so on and so forth, where there's enough randomness, so to speak, that there's no discernible pattern of what we're looking for. So then what I want to do is I want to go over the actual setup of it. So I haven't really changed anything with the block or the trial. The instructions are just what instructions always are. In this case, I've made a little experiment. So in the final experiment, you'll see a cross in the middle of the screen for a brief period of time. After seeing the cross, you'll see something appear either in the upper left, upper right, lower left, or lower right corner of the screen. Make sure I correct my spelling. Use your mouse to click where you saw whatever flashed on the screen, and when you're ready to begin, press space. So the idea behind this is that these videos are meant to serve as a foundational thing. So the first thing we do is we build a very simple experiment. The next thing we do is go over what inputs you can have. And then the following video, we go over kind of incorporating everything we learned before in this video. So I'll still explain how the mouse selection works, but the idea is that you've already should have seen that, so you're aware of what that looks like. So just looking at this, input any response is doing it. We're not going to record this response. We don't really need that. And then what we have now is in the actual block itself. So this is something that I've done that we haven't done before. So I figured it'd be cool if we had letters and words. pure conjecture, I imagine you might be able to see words faster than just single letters. Again, we're not really testing this, we're just using this as a possibility. But this is something you could look at. So if I had, let's say, numbers versus words, and I was doing some sort of collection to see what you remembered, or I was looking at accuracy, that might be a situation. So what I've done here is this letter trials is linked to a fixation cross, letters in a stimulus list that I'll show you in a moment. Location 1, 2, and location 3, 4, that's going to be two events that are simultaneously displayed on the screen, and that'll become our response area. Now in word trials, it's the exact same thing. Instead of words, it's letters. Now within the block of this, I've said randomize the trials in the block. So what that says is that trials are randomized. If a trial uses one or more stimulus lists, this will result in multiple presentations whose order is determined in the trial editor's list access tab. The idea behind this is instead of making two separate blocks and then two separate trials, I have one block that has two trials inside of it, but it randomizes what it shows. So I'll go to my stimulus list now. In letters, I just chose 12 items, 12 letters. And in words, I just wrote down 12 words. Then we'll do is we'll go into what each of these things look like. In the event editor for the fixation cross, it's just simply a cross. The input is going to disappear after 500 seconds. 500 milliseconds. That'd be really, really absurd. And that's kind of what that is. Letters is going to be the same thing. It's a text type. Chooses from these letters. Input is going to be 250 milliseconds. So a very, very short time. We're going to record this response. And then we're going to say words. Again, 250. Okay, so looking back at this now, location 1 and 2, when I go to it and I go to the, again, it looks a little bit wonky over here. That's because I've offset the text. And it's offset because I want them to be side by side. I want them to be representative of what they actually are. So the upper left putting the upper left, the upper right putting the upper right. If I preview it, it'll show me just that, all right? This isn't perfect. This probably could be in the center, but for our purposes, not necessary. The portion to notice is that these boxes are here. So from our last video, this should be apparent that these boxes represent a response area for a mouse click. So then location 3 and 4 do the same thing. Again, looking at the settings, you're going to see that this is made so that it does the same exact thing. When I preview this, I'm going to see the same thing. So when I display them simultaneously, they'll all be there at the same time. I think when I actually preview it, that you can't see it. So that's upsetting. Now again, the settings in order to enable that, if I go over here and I go to the presentation options, the second one will have this on, which it does, right? So this erases the screen beforehand, and that's exactly what you want to see. And over here, we just have this one end immediately afterwards. What that means is that we don't really need to record this at all because this one won't actually give us anything, but we'll leave it for the moment. And this one, we are recording this one and we're going to keep the timer. So to give an idea of what this looks like, I'm going to just run both of these together. I'm going to run both these together and just make sure we do run selected blocks only. And what it will say to us, if it will say, the following part, you see a cross middle screen for time, see the cross, whatever, right? So we press space. And now we have these options. Now those squares aren't there anymore. So I think it was over here. I click there and it goes. It's over there again. Now it's up top, I think. On the bottom right, top right, bottom right, lower left, upper left, lower right, there. Now I think it's a fault that I've made that of the words to be really big, so it's much easier to see them. Obviously, that would be a flaw in the design if we had the letters being different text than the words. For the moment, that's not really what we're too interested in. So now also, I haven't played around anything with the feedback. There is a way to determine what trial level this is. So if I sit over here, it could say, yes, I did show that letter over there. I'm not really going to go into that in this video. This is really more of just a kind of introduction to using trial levels as opposed to going really, really in depth for them. So this should end pretty soon. There's 12 in each trial. Supposedly. Okay, so then it finishes. That's that section. Now we're going to do is talk about color. So color, again, we'll go back and we'll go to these trial levels. We'll select color over here. And the idea is that we're going to use red and green. We're going to use red and green because they both have semantic relationships to good and bad, or right and wrong, or yes and no. We're not going to do anything with this. We're just going to make it random but no replacement. Nothing about this. We don't need to have any options over there. We could if we wanted to, but I didn't put anything in there. Then what I'll do is we'll go to the instructions, and they'll say, in the following experiment, you'll see several words. If the word you see is negative, press A. If the word you see is positive, press L. When you're ready to begin, press space. So this is going to be not a lexical decision-making task, but more of a sentiment decision-making task. So then we have these valence words. These words were created by using a sentiment that's built into a package in RStudio called Tidy Text, and the sentiment is called Bing. And what it does is it gives you the sentiment of words. So you could have negative words and positive words. So I did some sampling and some kind of exclusions to just generate positive words and negative words. So these are the positive words, and then right over here, these are the negative words. And the idea is that, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to do something very, very important. The way that the actual variability works is in the event setting, in settings, this position part. Usually this is set to fixed. I set it to variable, and then it automatically chooses whatever I have over there. In this case, it's the location data. So my apologies. That's the most important thing to note about that. Same token in this valenced part. This is usually fixed, but I've made it variable so that it could be red or it could be green. And the idea is to see whether or not, if a word is in a red color, if that is enough to make it negative, or if the meaning is processed as well. So kind of like a sentimental Stroop test, if you will. So the input, we're going to see the word, and we're going to, we're just going to leave it actually for the moment. And then we're going to reset the timer. Stimulus is over here, negative or positive. And this is set up in a way so that it'll be negative or positive, right? So again, they are kind of designed so that they will be spread apart so that it does make sense. They're not all kind of clustered together. There is feedback here. So if it's correct, it'll show the correct event. If it's wrong, it'll show the incorrect event. And then the correct and incorrect event are just simply words that say correct and wrong, right? Nothing too fancy. So now what I'll do is I'll select both of these blocks. I'll run these blocks by themselves. And again, we see this thing, so we see this, we do that. Now what it'll do is it'll show us a word. And that lech, not actually sure, it sounds pretty bad to me. Ready. And then what you would do is then you would look at the reaction times. You'd see were the reaction times greater for the incorrect words, and then you could look at the congruent. So is it the same thing where when the words are congruent to their color, is that anything? Now, again, this is something that is entirely conjecture on my part. I haven't read any research that shows this. It's entirely just me thinking that sounds like it could be a thing, but I'm not positive. I'm not really 100% sure. So the idea is that for our purposes, this does work because we're just looking to see if we can get this to do something. We wouldn't do any analysis. Sorry, I'm getting a scam phone call. We wouldn't do any analysis on this because one, it's just one person, and two, we don't really know too much about it. So we have some more popping up. Again, there should be 24 in total, so we should be done somewhat soon. And then it finishes. So that takes care of the color instructions. Again, you could use that for a abundance of things. I've seen it before. They set up a Stroop experiment that requires a little bit more work. So this is really just to kind of give a very brief introduction to trial levels at a very beginner level of saying this is what this does, this is what this does, this is what this does. The last one I go over is time instructions. So this is if you wanted to show different exposure times. So again, we'll go back into these trial levels. We'll go to our time category, and I've just listed these times separated by commas, and it tells you how to do it as well. So type of integer value separated by comma. So this would be 250 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds, and 1,000 milliseconds. Or in other words, quarter of a second, half a second, and then 1 second. A level selection, again, I just kind of put it over here, random with no replacement, no options, and then we leave it there. And then what I've done over here is I have a variable time instruction. So in this case, it's going to be a lesser decision-making task, but the only difference is now it's going to be randomized by time. So maybe we're seeing if the word is shown for a very brief period of time. Are you better at answering congruent or incongruent words? Again, we don't record the instructions in there, and we don't actually need to record this, but I'm going to leave it there anyways, and then we have that over there. So just to go back, in the answer, it's just W or NW, so that just means word or non-word. In the word LTD, this is just a list of words that I have. I've only done 10 over here, so 5 words, 5 non-words. And the only thing we have to make sure we do is just make sure that we randomize this. So we randomize it once per experiment run. That way we get different answers. So it's not just going to be word, 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 and then non-word, non-word, non-word. The answer has no feedback. The correct response could be positive, non-word. And I just want to note one thing I did over here. I like to use A and L as opposite keys. So if A is yes and L is no, I like that option. Primarily because I think using Y and N doesn't really make any sense because your hands are in awkward positions. And A and L, you can kind of anchor your hands to opposite sides of your keyboard. So you can do kind of whatever you like so long as you have a rationale for using it. Now, in order to get this time variability, the answer over here has nothing changed about it, but the words after a time limit, and the time limit here is variable. So it could show it for 250, for 500, or 1,000. Then we'll see what that looks like. So again, I'll select both of these, and I will run these. So again, we have our familiar instructions over here. Press A, and then it shows us pretty long. That's a word. Now again, you can make that more difficult. You can make it 100, 200, 300, whatever you wanted to. But that's the idea, that using these trial levels can help bring some variability into your experiments. In the idea of location, this could be if you're trying to cue something differently. If you want to have an interference task and you want to have somebody kind of looking over the screen for something, you can use it for that. For color, again, Stroop is a good idea. And this kind of, I don't know if it's actually a novel thing or not, but this semantics task of looking at whether a word's color is indicative of its semantic value, if that's even a thing. And then the time variability is good if you want to see if time exposure actually has an effect. One of my colleagues has done work before about time pressure to see whether or not you're given time pressure if you either answer more truthfully or if you answer kind of most radically and just kind of wildly. So that's the idea of this video, to give you an overview and a very brief introduction of these trial levels. I think moving forward, we might look at different stimuli types. So far we've done text, we've done images. We also work with using audio clips and movie clips. So we'll probably investigate something in that realm, and then we might just move on and kind of switch gears and look into using RStudio, and then further down the line using MATLAB as well, maybe getting more into the analysis side of things. So thank you, everybody, and have a good one.